Good evening. Hi, everybody. My name is Koen. I am from the National Cybersecurity Center. There are quite a number of similarities, especially at the beginning of my presentation, with the previous one. First of all, it was a nice trip from The Hague for me as well. Although I was not in a traffic jam, I took the train. The train was very busy. So, I'm a security advisor for the NCSC since 2013, and what I usually say about what I do is I don't actually do anything, I just talk about security. Today I'm going to talk about what the NCSC does. Our motto is usually making the Netherlands digitally secure. And this is actually a kind of a stock presentation, a corporate standard slide deck, only I sort of changed the order a bit, and I'm not going to stick to the script, because usually people use this presentation to tell people how the NCSC makes the Netherlands digitally secure, but quite frankly, we don't do that. It's not us, it's other people who do that, and we just know how to do that, and we try to make other people do the right thing. So, 3 key keywords for how we do stuff. We understand, we connect, and we prevent. Understand means we know what's going on, we have the expertise, the understanding. Connect is we know what some people need to know, and we know that some people know the stuff other people need to know, and we bring these people together so knowledge gets transferred from one place to the other. And prevent is the obvious goal, to prevent bad stuff from happening. So understanding, just in the broadest sense, the vulnerabilities, threats. We know what the risks are. We keep track of the bad guys. We exchange knowledge. We train ourselves, and we know what to do. And so we also share that knowledge. We write trend reports or guidelines or anything like that. But it's not just exchanging knowledge, it's also standing by in case something bad happens. Because we, aside from my job as an advisor is to help organizations prevent stuff from happening, but we also come into contact with organizations when bad stuff does happen, and we actually have quite a bit of crisis plans, contingency plans, in case of major disruptive incidents to society. Mostly, we want to prevent societal impact. Societal impact, we actually mean our constituency is not just the government, but also not the Netherlands as a whole. That's a bit too complicated to help every single person or every single tiny company to secure themselves. So we focus on what we call critical infrastructure. You might have heard that term. We mean, of course, power companies, water management, trains, airplanes, those sectors we consider critical infrastructure. That's actually something from a European law, the NIS Directive, Network and Information Security Directive. A very short course, crash course on European law. Also, I'm keeping the legal bit to a minimum, but I wanted to express the NIS directive. Directive kind of sounds a bit forcing something upon you, but actually the directive is the loose form of European law. The regulation is the strict form of European law. You probably know the General Data Protection Regulation, the European Privacy Law. So every country in Europe has to adapt a European regulation as a national law. A directive doesn't have to be transferred directly one-on-one as a national law, but the directive is a kind of an example on how you could do it. Now, and this directive has been translated into Dutch law as the WBNI, and that is kind of the law that states what the NCSC can do and for whom. It also states which sectors are actually considered critical infrastructure. That's something. There are examples of critical infrastructure stated by the European law, by the directive, but we have a different version. For example, in the Netherlands, healthcare is not critical infrastructure. We don't support the healthcare sector. All the other European countries do, but we don't, which is a bit weird. On the other hand, we also have the freedom to designate critical infrastructures that other countries don't. For example, our water management, our dikes and flood protection. That's usually not critical infrastructure in other countries, but in the Netherlands it definitely is. But the law also states, the Dutch version, the WBNI, also states what the NCSC can do. And another basic principle of law in many modern democracies is that a government cannot do anything at all in general, except if a law specifically states that they can, which is the complete opposite of civilians in a country. Civilians can't do anything unless a law forbids it. So for the government, it's the other way around. So the NCSC is actually not allowed to do anything except what is explicitly in the WBNI. The funny thing is, the NCSC exists since 2012. And its predecessor, GovCert, or GovCert.nl, exists since 2002. The WBNI exists since 2017, I think. So for about 15 years, there was no law stating what the NCSC or its predecessor could do. So basically, we were illegal as a government organization, technically speaking, of course. But now that we have a law, there are clear indications of what we can do. For example, if we want to share threat intelligence, for example, bad stuff happens on a specific IP address, we would like to advise a lot of organizations to block that IP address. Well, an IP address is actually personally identifiable information. So the GDPR says you cannot just share that. That's processing of personal information. So our law actually grants us the exception to the GDPR, saying that we can actually share IP addresses and email addresses for very specific means, and sharing it only with very specific organizations. And that's what gives us kind of the authority to do what we do, but it's also very limiting. We cannot just share bad IP addresses with the whole world. So that's just a tiny bit annoying, but also, you want this to be well arranged. There is a new NIS directive coming. It's just finished all the process in the European Parliament, or it's getting ratified in the European Parliament, and in the next 1.5 years, it gets reworked into a new Dutch version, expanding the definition of critical infrastructure. So, and also the new version is also expanding the NCSC's abilities, which is a good thing. At least I think it's a good thing. But there's still one very big limitation. The government does not own or control any part of the internet. We control highways and waterways, so we can put a red cross on a sign on a highway lane saying this road is closed. We cannot put a red cross on a glass fiber, not just because it's practically impossible, but also because the internet cables are not the government's. We don't control it. We don't control the data that goes over it. It's all private. And so this, of course, The government does own tiny bits of the internet. There are 4 data centers, and there's the so-called The Hague Ring. That's a kind of a closed, firewalled, wide area network in The Hague, connecting all the ministries in a sort of a very private part of the internet, which is a bit more secure, so we can share state secrets up to a certain level, not everything. But that's just an aside. Main theme, the rest of the internet is not ours and we cannot control it. And if there is a vulnerability, we can't go out and patch it. We are not an authority. We don't have any legal means to actually force people to do something. We cannot issue fines if companies are not doing their jobs. So we need other people to do the job that we want them to do for the good of society, to secure the internet. So the NCSC is by law designated as the National Incident Response Coordinator. If there is a major incident in the country, we are the primary point of contact. We are a point of contact not just for entities within the Netherlands, but also from outside. So if, for example, in Finland, just a random example, a bank sees a phishing site and it's hosted somewhere in the Netherlands, then they can tell the NCSC of Finland, hey, there's a phishing site there, we want it taken down. And then the Finnish NCSC tells us, hey, we see it's hosted in the Netherlands, and then we find out where the hosting provider is, and we call the hosting provider and say, please take it down. That's actually what we say. We say, please take it down. We don't go there and pull the plug, because we can't. We just have to say please and hope they comply. Most hosting providers, of course, do, but there are some usually advertised as bulletproof hosters, and they don't always listen to us. And then there's not a lot we can do. We can call the police, but the police has to do an investigation and try to find out if something actually illegal is proven to happen there, and then the police can finally interdict. But for a phishing website, you usually want the takedown procedure to be a matter of hours and not 3 weeks of a police investigation. So our job is hardly securing things ourselves, but connecting all the people who know what to do and who can actually, the people who have the switches and the knobs of the internet. I once suggested that we should, as the NCSC, should put out an April Fool's press release on April 1st, stating that, one example is that the IETF has handed over control of the Dutch part of the internet to the NCSC, and now we can fully control it, which is nonsense, of course. Or another suggestion I once made, that we should install a fake kill switch of the internet in our operations room, and just have pictures of it shown on April 1st, saying, look, here's our brand new kill switch. And maybe something with a two-person principle, that there's a second part with someone needs to insert a key and keep it switched on, and someone else, it's out of reach for one person. So all kinds of security measures for a kill switch of the internet, which is, of course, hardly possible for us to do. So the only thing we can do is talk to other people. And in order to do that, we not just need to understand the threats and the vulnerabilities and all the things we as a community always talk about. We also need to understand a lot about communication. We need timing. We need the proper authority. And by proper authority, I mean we as the NCSC need to continuously prove that we actually do understand what's going on. So we need to be open about our threat reports. Oh, okay, that's all right. We need to be we need to publish a lot of our knowledge not just to share that knowledge, but also to demonstrate that we are still on point with what we know and what we can do. And by doing so, and having the community realize, okay, the people at the NCSC actually know what they're talking about, then most people are actually willing to listen to us if we want to convince people of some kind of a new trend or a new standard that we want people to apply. And this is a bit of a boring. I don't want to give a lineup of all the parties that we actually connect with, but it's a lot. We are the national point of contact, and many organizations that do anything with security in the Netherlands actually also actively seek out contact with us because they know they want to connect with us because we have a network. We can connect them with others and others with them. And also, I'm skipping to this slide, but I forgot parts of the story at my previous slide. Sorry, my trip around the emergency exit got me a bit off guard. So, because I was talking about our knowledge authority, but also government communication has this little blue ribbon at the top with the National Coat of Arms on it. If you publish anything with that little bit, then managers and directors at companies are actually very much willing to listen to you. It's just that little thing. And when we talk to companies, there are many big companies who have their own security organization. Some companies actually have bigger security organizations than the NCSC is big. We have about 200 people. Well, there are some companies with 500 people in security. So they know what's going on. They don't need us to tell them what's going on. But when they tell their board of directors, hey, we need to do this, because we think it's important, then the board of directors says, do you really need that much of a budget? Or does it really have to have this big of an impact on our business or our profitability or anything? But when they sometimes ask us, can you just publish a fact sheet about that subject? And we do, and it has this blue ribbon on it. And then they take the fact sheet with the blue ribbon to their board of directors and say, we need to do this because the NCSC says we need to do so. And then suddenly they have the budget. It's like magic, but we need to uphold, of course, our quality standards to be able to do that. And also, I said before, it requires timing, because not every message is equally welcome at every moment. An example of bad timing we employed was in 2013 when we said this is a good time to start phasing out Windows XP. That was a year too early because Windows XP was still supported for just over a year. And nobody was listening to us. Nobody was actually starting their strategy to phase out Windows XP. And then it was 2014 and it got end of life. And suddenly everyone panicked and said, why isn't the NCSC talking about this? And we had to say, wait a minute, we said this was a good idea a year ago. But that was bad timing, obviously. And also, there was no priority. The people did not feel the priority at that moment. You have a question?
Yeah. Did you also include in your message, you have 1 year left to phase it out in a controlled way, or?
I don't think we explicitly said you have 1 year left, because we don't know at what specific time someone is reading that message. But what we said is you don't have a lot of time left, so start now.
Yeah, the first thing that I thought was bad timing because it was just 1 year left. And you would say there are a lot of organizations that take much more than 1 year.
Yeah.
But just leave that for the one.
Yeah. Okay. So that was about timing. Another thing is we get a lot of questions about, can you publish a fact sheet on this or that subject, because we need that as a leverage. And but sometimes we don't actually do that because we also think about, is it really up to us to say something? And we try to think about what's the impact it has when we do it now, and what do we want to achieve? How is this actually going to help to secure the internet in the Netherlands or worldwide? So there's a bit of scrutiny going on before we actually go and publish fact sheets or any other kind of messages. Yes, you have a question?
Can you give an example of that? I'm curious. What kind of requests you turn down for not writing a sheet?
So we have frequently actually turned down requests about patch management guidelines. It's not because we don't think patch management is important. It is. It definitely is. But it's not up to us to actually come with comprehensive patch management guidelines. There are probably other organizations in the world, standardization organizations, who are better at that job and have more authority possibly. And those standards will probably work better.
Just a logo with a blank page with a link to those.
Yeah, that's also something we have actually done a few times and consider doing more often. It's when other organizations actually publish very good information, very good guidelines, and we just want to put those on our website stating NCSE endorses this.
Yeah. NIST plus
NIST, yes. So, this is about all kinds of organizations in the Netherlands, regional or sectoral organizations that really want to cooperate with us. They want to be incorporated in our network. And we also have an international network. So there are things on a European level. So ENISA, that is the European Union Security Agency. They are they are also, for example, publishing standards or guidelines, and we sometimes adapt those. We also have a very good, the European Union CSERT network. We have a very good network with government cert organizations, so the NCSCs and equivalents in other countries. We have continuously an open chat channel with all of those, and we have actually a 24/7 manned operation at the NCSE, but not every country in Europe has a 24/7 occupancy. But that comms link, especially in the night when it's a bit dull for the handlers on duty, they sometimes chat about not very important things, but at least they've got something to do. So usually when you arrive in the morning and say, hey, is anything new on the European network? And we see, there's a ransomware hit there. Well, ransomware is, of course, nasty for the person that has been hit, but it's on the broader trend of ransomware, just a random ransomware attack is not very special anymore to us. But the funny thing is, we do actually also have informal meetings with our European counterparts, and we have the motto "Make friends before you need them." So we actually a couple of times a year we meet and we get together. We also go out for drinks after the formal part of the meeting, because once you've been drunk with someone, it's very easy to pick up a phone and call them if you actually need them. So it's a bit informal, but it's very, very, very useful at the moment when you have a phishing site hosted somewhere in Slovenia and you don't know who to call there, except for that one person you've shared a beer with a couple of months ago, and then you can actually easily call that person and ask for help. There's also worldwide networks. They are not as informal, but there is, of course, IWWN is the International Watch and Warning Network that is managed by the United States National CERT, which is CISA, it's called, the Critical Infrastructure Security Agency. That's a bit for a lot of operational communication, but especially in times of crisis. So when there are major incidents, international incidents happening, the IWWN is a very important communication channel. First is more of at a strategic level, just it is a kind of a community which holds conferences, much like OWASP actually. It holds meetups and conferences. It has local chapters and global meetings, and we just exchange a lot of knowledge there. And there's the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise that is mostly to actually help developing countries to increase their resilience and their cybersecurity capacities. Something else we do on a national level, we have the National Detection Network. That name sometimes freaks people out. Sometimes people actually think that the National Detection Network is an actual network with physical servers in places where the NCSC is actually monitoring internet traffic and filtering or blocking stuff. That's not really the case. It's a knowledge sharing platform. So every organization in critical infrastructure or national government can have their own intrusion detection system, and we the National Detection Network is actually just a communications network where we share the detection information, so the indicators of compromise. So if we find malware somewhere, or we receive a report about a specific malware which has signatures on it, we share the signatures, and every participant in the detection network sees those signatures popping up, or IP addresses which are hosting command and control or anything, any kind of indicators of compromise, and every organization can decide for themselves, do we think this is a threat, and do we monitor on our network for this threat, and if we do, they may get hits, and they give feedback on the network, hey, we have a hit here or there on this particular signature. So it's just a threat intel sharing platform and not actually a physical detection system. Yes?
Are these only government agencies or government organizations, or also private development organizations and commercial?
Yes, there are commercial organizations. Only the critical infrastructure ones, those designated explicitly by their relevant ministry as essential service provider. And so those are power companies or the railway company or something like that. They do have so they have their own intrusion detection system. That's the important bit. They only receive the threat intel from us, and they decide for themselves to input it into their detection. And for the national government organizations, we actually manage a little bit more for the detection sensors. So we also manage the intrusion detection systems, but they are still owned by them on their network. And but we have a more direct input and output from those detection systems. But that's just the government.
Maybe just a hypothetical question. This sounds like a brilliant idea, to be honest. Just to share threat intelligence across multiple organizations, critical in this case. Have you guys been able to prove that it works? That a water company, basically that's critical infrastructure, has received threat intel that really is relative to them, but it came from a bank or it came from a different part. Like, have the effectivity of this network is proven?
There have been quite a lot of false positives and quite a low number of true positives. It's a relatively new system. It's been running for a few years now, and we are still improving, and we're learning from our experiences. So I shouldn't say that it has been definitively proven to be effective, but we are increasing the quality to minimize false positives, to maximize true positives, and also to especially minimize the false negatives. So we actually stop attacks from happening. Now, a lot of information about the effectiveness of this network is also unknown to me, because the intelligence agencies, AIVD and MIVD, contribute a lot, but they also don't disclose the hits on their indicators. They want to investigate it for themselves, but we don't know for sure how much actual the intelligence agencies worry a lot about nation state sponsored attacks from Russia or China, the major advanced threats, but they don't want to disclose all the details on the actual attacks happening.
One question.
Yes.
Is it possible that NCC is sharing this kind of information with Microsoft? So they are using their SIEM solution, and a lot of companies are using that SIEM solution.
We are not sharing with Microsoft. We are sharing with because when we share a lot of threat intel is, like I said, about IP addresses, personally identifiable information, and the law is very limiting on whom we can share it with. We do try to designate if there is a non-critical infrastructure but very important a company such as Microsoft. We know they can actually help so many other organizations be more secure. So we would want to share so much information with them to help them help their clients. But we have to use intermediate organizations. We can actually designate intermediate organizations as organizations with the objectively knowable purpose of sharing information. That is, it's an OKTT in Dutch. It's the single most terrible government abbreviation you will ever learn about, the OKTT. But an organization designated as such can receive threat intel from us, and they can share it with their constituency. So they act as an intermediate organization, and that is the only legal way for us to share specific information. Yes.
Do you also are limits where you get your information from, or can you also use publicly available information to create IOCs?
Yes, we use a lot of publicly available information. For example, from a lot of antivirus companies who publish their virus analysis. We usually take those the hashes, for example, from viruses. We really do. That's actually what we most share. Anything about the NDN before I move on to the next?
Maybe 10 minutes more.
10 minutes? Okay. I would like to take the last few minutes to talk about vulnerability disclosure. So this is, of course, something DIVD also does a lot, and where we cooperate a lot. There may be security researchers among you who strictly a lot of vulnerability research is actually illegal. Now, we learned about proportionality and subsidiarity, so we know that there are actually, if something goes to court, a judge will actually look if some research has been done reasonably, but strictly speaking, it is illegal. But we do realize that vulnerability research really helps organizations and especially vendors of software and hardware to better secure their products. So it is very important that security researchers are actually heard, and if they want to publish some information about the vulnerability, they are taken seriously. The vulnerability gets fixed, and it also helps secure the internet. And so the NCSC has published guidelines on vulnerability disclosure. So also it's not really explicitly stating proportionality and subsidiarity, but generally the guidelines from the NCSC are about the same from a legal perspective. So don't do too much, just do what you need to prove the vulnerability, and if there are lesser means available, please use those. And we expect the owners of systems or the vendors of software and systems to not sue the researchers for finding vulnerabilities. And so there are some guidelines, and we are very happy to see that there are a lot of organizations, especially in the Netherlands, but also around the world, who have adopted our example guidelines as their actually code of conduct for vulnerability research. And it's getting better, but on the other hand, sometimes you do get into a conflict with a vendor. Maybe just a difference in opinion because a vendor thinks you did go a little too far to prove something. And in those cases, the NCSC can actually help as a mediator. If you want to disclose a vulnerability, you stumble upon a vendor who is not cooperating or who is threatening to sue you, you can actually contact us and we can help you with the disclosure process. We also have this extensive network reaching out into a lot of organizations, also with the right contact person who is responsible for security in that organization. Because sometimes an organization doesn't have a security contact point, and so a researcher will just have to contact regular customer service, and a customer service agent may not understand what the researcher is talking about, and the report falls on deaf ears. So we can help get into contact with the right person, and if there is further legal conflict, we can actually also try to mediate a little and keep those things out of court and make sure vulnerabilities just get fixed and the internet gets to be more secured. Yes, you have a question.
Two questions. First,
yes.
How's the procedure of announcements and materials regarding the CBD? Do you use follow the standard and framework like OS or even MyFrame? The second question is that do you have any plan to improve your rewards for your bounce for your CBD, or at least change the layout of your for the Lucy t-shirt as well? At least.
The layout of the what do you mean by that?
The t-shirts or the rewards or the any kind of improvements for the
Improvements for the rewards.
researchers to engage more on the CDD?
Yes, I understand there are several people who actually file a lot of CVD reports with us, and every time they get awarded just a T-shirt, and some people actually have this big of a stack of T-shirts. So sometimes we try to offer them something else, like a gift coupon for something, but it's actually very hard for a government organization to hand out gifts because it's all taxpayer money, and it's also not in our law to we are not officially allowed to hand out gifts, so that's a very hard legal problem for us actually to increase.
Maybe you can use intermediary.
This is the legal gray area, I think.
Yeah, it's a gray area.
Start off also shorts instead of just t-shirts. Some variety.
Yeah, some variety might be nice. I think. Yeah, there's actually one vulnerability researcher who has done so many reports. I mean, hundreds of them. He's got quite a bit of automation of vulnerability detection, and we have. Just out of despair, we didn't know what to offer him anymore, and we gave him a spot to talk at the One conference, our annual conference. Usually we have a call for participation, and we get a lot of requests from speakers to talk at the conference. It's a very prestigious one because when people get reviews, sometimes they get very mad. They really want to talk at our conference. So we think, okay, if that's so prestigious, let's give that as an award to that vulnerability researcher who has actually something very interesting to say about automating vulnerability discovery. Yeah. You actually, I forgot, I skipped your first question, I think. What was your first question again?
About the procedures of the analysis and triage regarding CVD, how you do this. Do you follow any kind of security standards, frameworks to prioritize vulnerabilities?
Yes, we have our own framework actually for determining the risk level of a vulnerability. So we have our own flowchart with questions like do you need authentication or is it unauthenticated, and what's the impact? Is it a DOS or is it code execution? All those kinds of questions to determine a probability and an impact level, and those combined are a risk.
Because it's mostly web-based, like for most complex scenarios, we can't select any kind of those categories. Like for mobile, there is nothing regarding mobile section as well.
Right.
So, yeah, it's only web application.
Okay, maybe that could use some improvement then on our side. I will take it with me to my colleagues. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
There's 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. Okay. Yes. My day-to-day job is just talking to people. That's basically it. So we have an operations department who do incident response, who know about vulnerabilities going on, and they have a meetup at 9:30 in the morning, and we just discuss what's in the news and what are the problems in the country on the internet, and I just listen to it. I get my own view of the trends, stuff happening, and I use that knowledge and also I visit conferences and I talk to other people, but mainly my day-to-day knowledge acquisition is that meeting at 9:30, and I use it. I go to people. I answer questions from our constituency. They ask questions via email, and sometimes it's just a very short question, and email them back, and that's a happy answer. But sometimes questions from constituency are more complicated, and I need to have multiple calls with them or visit them, and we really have to talk through what their situation is, how we can help them. And I also write those fact sheets when we need to write one about something new, or we update an older one. We also keep track of the other ones, and I speak like I do here. I'm also just a speaker as profession. So knowledge acquisition and sharing is my day-to-day job. Yes.
Yeah, I feel that one of the tasks of the government is to keep us all safe, not just the bio companies. How do you feel about NCC owning information such as, I don't know, printable version of Citrix? I recall a lot of controversy in 2020 about that.
Yes.
And not sharing it with, everyone, just with the vital infrastructure.
I do actually sometimes feel bad about when we can't share information with everyone. Sometimes we actually stumble upon large amounts of data. For example, when especially in government organizations, when there's an incident, we can do forensic analysis. We don't always do that in commercial companies, but in the government we often do that. And we find, for example, a leaked data file with email addresses. You want to email all those people to notify them, hey, your email address has been leaked, or maybe your password has been leaked. But we are not the ones allowed to do that. The Data Protection Authority, the AP, actually steps in when there's a data breach concerning personal information, and they direct an organization. You should notify those people, or you don't have to. But we can't do it when we want to.
For example, is privacy data.
Yeah.
A printable version of Citrix, and knowing that a range of hospitals is using that printable version is a different case.
Yeah, but we are officially not allowed to know which hospitals are using what version of software. And sometimes, sorry? We can actually. So your example was about Citrix. That also it was evaluated internally, and we did actually improve our procedures for it. And for example, the Log4j incident we had last winter, we had a different approach, and I think, I don't mean to brag, but I think it went a lot better on how much information we share. We had this GitHub page with a list of software using Log4j vulnerable or not vulnerable versions. So that is actually the way we want to go, and we don't want to, I don't want to keep anything a secret because it's my job to share knowledge, but sometimes legal says no, but sometimes it's also just a mistake. We are still human beings and we can make mistakes, but we want to get feedback and learn.
So maybe, Koen, any last thought you want to share, because we can close, and then we can ask you the questions.
I think this is a very good moment to close, and I'll be available for more questions.